Good evening, students. This is your teacher Manatuj De. Today I am in front of you with a poem called The Ball Poem by John Berryman. Before I go ahead, I would like to highlight on the salient features of my lesson today. First, I will start with short author biography, which will be followed by lesson synopsis. Lesson synopsis will be followed by explanation of the vocabulary that you happen to find in a poem. Then detailed explanation. Then I will be focusing on literary devices and their explanation, and then the entire recapitulation of the poem. So the name of my poem today is The Ball Poem by John Berryman. So before I go ahead, first of all, as I told you, the short biography of John Berryman. John Berryman is a scholar and professor as well as a poet. Best known for the Dream Songs, which was composed on 1969, a series of poems, which was an intensely personal sequence of 385 poems, which brought him the Pulitzer Prize and National Book Award. John Berryman graduated from Columbia in 1936, then went to study at Cambridge University for 2 years on a scholarship. In 1955, after teaching stints at Harvard and Princeton University, Berryman took a position at the University of Minnesota, where he remained until his death. Now, let us go to the synopsis of the poem. So, my dear students, the poem, Ball Poem, highlights the hardcore reality of life that everyone has to go through someday or the other. The poem also focuses on how to come to terms with our grief resulting out of any losses. The poem stresses on the fact of assuming self-responsibility and being accountable for our own possessions. So here we begin. As you can see on the screen, stanza 1, what is the boy now who has lost his ball? What is he to do? I saw it go merrily bouncing down the street, and then merrily over. There it is in the water. No use to say, oh, there are other balls. So, here, as you can see, that a boy was playing with a ball, and suddenly the ball skipped out of his hand and went into the street and then fell into a water body. So you can see here the vocabulary merrily. Merrily here, it's a poetic way of saying happily. Here the ball has been personified with the term merrily. So merrily the ball went, merrily means the boy was going happily down the street into a water body, and then bouncing, jumping up and down, of course. The boy has emotional attachment for the ball, therefore he grieves over the loss of his ball. Now we'll go to the next stanza. An ultimate shaking grief fixes the boy as he stands rigid, trembling, staring down all his young days into the harbor where his ball went. I would not intrude on him. A dime, another ball is worthless. This is an important stanza, of course. Shaking grief here refers to, my dear students, sadness that troubles the boy. Trembling is shaking or shivering. Harbor, you might be knowing, it's a part of the ocean or a lake that is next to land. Intrude is to interfere in the matters of the boy, and the dime is 10 cents US currency. So, an ultimate shaking grief fixes the boy. What does it mean? After the boy lost the ball, he was suddenly taken aback and he was shocked. He was overpowered with grief at the very loss of his ball. That is why shaking grief has been used. As he stands rigid, he became dumbfounded. He became surprised. He was not able to move. He was so stunned that suddenly the ball went out of his hand and he was stunned. So as he stands rigid, trembling because he felt frightened that he might not recover the ball. staring down all his young days into the harbor. He was staring down means he was, standing with a gaze onto the place where the ball has gone, and that gaze was a hopeless gaze because there was no chance of his recovering the ball. Therefore, he was trembling, and the ball went into the harbor. So the boy is in a state of sadness due to sudden loss of his ball. His ball went, I would not intrude on him. The poet is saying intrude means the poet does not want to interfere with the matter of the boy. The poet wants that the boy should realize and come to terms with the loss by himself. The poet doesn't want to interfere in the matter of the boy. Therefore, he says, I would not intrude on him. A dime, another ball is worthless. Buying another ball for the boy is worthless because there is a feeling, there is an emotion attached to the ball which cannot be purchased by money. So the poet wants the boy to realize the importance of having even a small thing like ball, and what happens consequent upon losing it. What happens as a result of losing it? Therefore, the poet wants the boy to realize it. The ball skipped from his hand and landed itself into a harbor. The poet, being an onlooker, does not speak to console the boy. Why? Because the poet wants the boy to shoulder responsibility from his early childhood. That is the reason as to why the poet says that he would not like to intrude or interfere in the matter of the boy. Okay, let's move on to the next stanza now. Now, he senses his first responsibility in a world of possessions. People will take balls, balls will be lost always, little boy, and no one buys a ball back, money is external. Here, the poet wants to convey the real message to the boy, to the readers. The boy seems to realize that he needs to take care of his own things. Therefore, he senses his first responsibility. When he is not able to recover the ball and he is in a state of despair, the boy seems to realize that it was because of his mistake or because of some other reason that he has lost the ball. He should take ownership of the ball. Therefore, the poet wants us to convey that the boy, in the process of realizing that the ball has gone somewhere, it has parted from him, he wants to, the boy is learning a very important lesson. What is the lesson? In a world of possessions, possessions here refer to something that is owned or possessed. In a world of possession, because our society is governed by possessions, so our craze for owning things, that is in a world of possession, the poet wants to say that in this materialistic world, we want to possess something or the other. So the world is primarily governed by the craze for owning things. So in a world of possessions, people will take his balls, means he will be losing his ball. Ball is a metaphor for something what we own. It's not necessarily a ball. Ball is an instance in the poem, of course, but ball in the larger context means anything that we possess, we might lose it. In the world of possession, circumstances might take something away from us. Okay, ball is just a little example. So people will take balls, balls will be lost always, little boy, and no one buys a ball back, money is external. Here the poet says that no one can buy the memory that is attached to the ball. Money cannot buy the emotion attached to the ball. You can buy a ball for the boy, but you cannot buy the emotion, the feelings that are attached to the ball. Therefore, it is a very important lesson. We must take ownership of the thing that we possess, and we must realize that we are accountable for everything that we lose in life. And also, we must come to terms with the losses. These are some of the values that the poet wants us to, inherit or sort of imbibe in us. Now let's move on to the next stanza. He is learning well behind his desperate eyes. Desperate eyes here refers to hope against hope. The epistemology of loss. Epistemology of loss here refers to what it means to lose something. Epistemology is a Greek word, the origin of which is, the original word of epistemology is epistome, which means knowledge, and epistemology is the study of the nature of knowledge itself. So the poet means to say that from the very nature of loss, the boy would learn to come to terms with the grief of losing the ball. Because my dear students, it so happens that until and unless we lose something, something gets parted from us, we do not realize the importance of it. So in the process of suffering the pain of losing something, okay, the boy would be able to come to terms with the grief of losing the ball. So it is the law of the universe, my dear students, that one day every man will learn how to adjust with the loss, with the grief of losing something. The poet seems to convey the message to us that every human being learns to adjust with the loss after he himself undergoes the experience of losing something. Therefore, until and unless we are into a situation where we are at a loss, we do not learn the lesson. So the poet tells us in this stanza that by the very process of losing the ball, the boy is in a process, gradual process of learning to come to terms with the grief. And then the concluding lines are also very interesting. He says, how to stand up knowing what every man must one day know, and most know many days how to stand up. Means it is pertinent for every one of us, that we have to come to terms with our loss one day or the other. Time is the great healer, of course, and this world is nothing of in this world is permanent, so we've got to part with something or the other, okay, one day or another. But at the end of the day, we've got to learn to come to terms with the grief over losing something. Therefore, the poem gives a message that whatever we own is not there with us for a long time. Someday or the other it will be lost, but we must learn to come to terms with the grief. Okay, and the boy is also learning the same in the process of suffering the loss. Now let's move on to the concluding part, that is the recapitulation of the poem. The poem highlights the sadness of a boy for losing a ball. From the very loss of the ball, he will come to terms with the loss in due course of time. The ball is a metaphor for everything that we own or possess. The poem teaches us the inescapable truth of life, that we shall certainly part with things or people, including our near and dear ones. But we need to learn to come to terms with every loss. Loss is inevitable, that is a must in human life. But what makes us strong to stand up against any kind of loss is our positive attitude, which becomes a catalyst to bear the loss in life. So it's a very valuable lesson that teaches us the important lesson in life, that everything parts away from us in some time or the other in our life. So my dear students, now we've come to the concluding part. Let me discuss the literary devices. Repetition is first, like what, word, balls, these are repeated. So that is a literary device called repetition. Next, we come to know about alliteration. We come across the example of an alliteration. Repetition of consonant sounds in successive or near successive words is called alliteration. Like for example, in the poem is given, buys a ball back. You can see the repetition of the consonant B, okay, in successive words. So buys a ball back. Repetition of the consonant sound B in successive words. Next literary device is anaphora. Anaphora means use of repeated words in two or more lines. Like for example, what is the boy now who has lost his ball? What is he to do? And then merrily bouncing down the street, and then merrily over. So repetition of the same word, that is called anaphora in successive lines. Thank you so much. That's now, my dear students, for question answer session, log into my blog, which is englishwithmanathush.blogspot.com. Thanks for watching. And the next poem is Amanda.